My life at 38 wasn't quite what I had envisioned. Sitting alone in our living room, surrounded by the quietness of our spacious home, I couldn't help but reflect on the past decade. My name is Emma, and this is the story of a dream that remained just that, a dream. Michael and I met in our late 20s. He was everything I had hoped for in a partner, kind, understanding, and with a sense of humor that could lighten even the darkest days. We married within a year of meeting, full of love and hopes for a future that included children, laughter, and shared memories. From the beginning, we were eager to start a family. But as months turned into years with no success, our optimism slowly began to wane. We tried everything: doctors, treatments, endless tests. But the result was always the same. Nothing worked. The unspoken disappointment grew heavier with each passing day. Our families, especially Michael's, were less than supportive. His mother, a stern woman with traditional beliefs, made her opinions loudly known. "You need to carry on the family line," she would often say, her words like daggers to my already fragile heart. "Adoption is not an option. We need our own blood." Her disapproval was a constant pressure, a reminder of my failure to fulfill the one role she deemed essential. I still remember the day Michael and I discussed adoption. We were sitting in our kitchen, the morning light casting hopeful glimmers across the table. But even as we spoke of names and nursery colors, I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the unspoken fears of going against his family's wishes. That conversation, full of hope, ended in silence, the dream of adoption fading away like a mirage. Our marriage, once a source of strength and comfort, began to feel the strain. Conversations grew shorter, nights lonelier. I could feel Michael drifting away, his once warm gaze now often clouded with unspoken thoughts. One evening, as I walked past our home office, I overheard a conversation that would change everything. Michael's voice, usually so calm, was tinged with a tension I'd never heard before. His mother's voice, on the other end of the phone, was insistent. "Michael, you need to think about your future. You can't waste your life with a woman who can't give you children. It's time to find someone young, someone healthy," she said, her words like a cold, piercing wind. There was a pause, and I held my breath, waiting, hoping for Michael to defend our love, our marriage. But his response was a heart-shattering silence, followed by a hesitant, "I'll think about it, Mom." That moment, hidden in the shadows of our hallway, a part of me shattered. The uncertainty in Michael's voice, the lack of immediate rejection of his mother's cruel suggestion, spoke louder than any words of reassurance he had ever given me. The realization that my marriage, my dream of a family, was hanging by a thread was a painful awakening. As I quietly retreated to our bedroom, the harsh truth settled in. Our journey to have a child had not just been a battle against infertility. It had become a battle for my marriage, a battle that, unbeknownst to me, I was already losing. Lying awake in bed that night, I couldn't escape the echoing words of the conversation I had overheard. The next morning, I found myself mechanically preparing breakfast, the silence between Michael and me more pronounced than ever. "Michael, we need to talk," I said, breaking the silence as we sat at the breakfast table. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a mix of sadness and resignation. "I know, Emma. After last night, I know. I overheard your conversation with your mother," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael's expression changed to one of shock and then guilt. "Emma, I didn't mean for you to hear that." "But I did, Michael, and it hurts, knowing that you're even considering it," I replied, trying to hold back my tears. He reached across the table, his hand hesitating before touching mine. "I'm sorry, Emma. I'm lost. I don't know what to do anymore." I withdrew my hand, feeling a chasm growing between us. "I've made an appointment with a new specialist, Dr. Simmons. They say he's the best in fertility treatments. I want to try, one last time." Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, Emma. If that's what you want, I'll support you." The appointment with Dr. Simmons was filled with a mix of hope and dread. His office was clinical and impersonal, much like the news he delivered. "I've reviewed your previous tests and treatments," Dr. Simmons began, his voice steady and professional. "I'm afraid the likelihood of you conceiving is less than 1%. The finality in his words hit me like a physical blow. "So, there's no chance?" I asked, clinging to a sliver of hope. Dr. Simmons sighed. "It's highly unlikely, Emma. I'm sorry." I sat there, numb, the dreams of motherhood dissolving around me. Michael reached for my hand, a gesture of support, but it felt empty, devoid of the connection we once shared. On the drive home, we spoke little. The air was thick with unspoken words and broken dreams. Back home, I found the courage to voice the thought that had been haunting me. "Michael, if you want to leave, to find someone else, I won't hold it against you." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Emma, I never wanted this to be about choosing. I love you, but I also want a family, and I don't know if I can let go of that dream." His words were like a confirmation of what I already knew. Our marriage was at its breaking point, not because of lack of love, but because of unfulfilled dreams. In that moment, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the gap between two people's needs and desires. And as the sun set on that day, so did it on the life we had built together, leaving us at a crossroads, uncertain of what lay ahead. The days following our conversation blurred into each other, each as hollow and heavy as the last. The decision to divorce, once spoken into existence, loomed over us like an inevitable storm. We moved through the motions, packing and dividing our shared life with a somber efficiency. I temporarily moved in with my sister Lily, who had always been my rock. Her small apartment was a stark contrast to the home I had shared with Michael, but it was a welcome haven in the storm of my life. "Emma, you know you can stay as long as you need, right?" Lily said one evening as we sat in her living room, a half-empty pizza box on the coffee table. I nodded, managing a small smile. "Thanks, Lil. I don't know what I'd do without you." She reached over, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're stronger than you think, Em. You'll get through this." But as comforting as her words were, I couldn't shake off the feeling of failure, of a future slipping through my fingers. A month after the divorce, I attended a party hosted by mutual friends of Michael and me. I had debated whether to go, but Lily insisted it would be good for me to get out. The party was in full swing when I arrived, and I did my best to mingle, to smile and engage in small talk. Then I saw him. Michael was there, across the room, laughing at something a young woman said to him. My heart clenched at the sight. He looked the same, yet different, lighter somehow. As if sensing my gaze, he looked up and our eyes met. For a moment, everything else faded. He excused himself from the conversation and made his way over to me. "Emma," he greeted, his voice a familiar melody that stirred old feelings. "Michael," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It's good to see you," he said, and I wondered if he really meant it. "You too," I lied, the words tasting bitter. We stood awkwardly for a moment before he spoke again. "How have you been?" "I'm getting by," I said, shrugging slightly. "And you?" He nodded. "Yeah, same. Getting by." The conversation that followed was a dance around the past, careful and measured. We talked about work, about mutual friends, about everything except the elephant in the room, our failed marriage. "I should get going," I said eventually, the weight of his presence becoming too much. "Right. Yeah, of course," Michael replied, his eyes holding mine for a moment longer than necessary. I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I left the party, I couldn't help but feel like I was leaving a part of myself behind, a part that belonged to a different life, a different Emma. A few weeks after the party, Michael called me out of the blue. Hearing his voice again sent a jumble of emotions through me. "Hey, Emma, I was wondering if we could meet up. There's something I need to talk to you about," Michael said, sounding hesitant. Curiosity got the better of me. "Sure, Michael. Where do you want to meet?" "How about the cafe where we used to go on Saturdays?" he suggested. The cafe was a place filled with memories of laughter and shared dreams. Sitting across from Michael in the familiar setting felt surreal. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Emma, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started. About us. About everything that happened. I waited, not sure where this was leading. I regret how things ended between us. I wanted to say I'm sorry. He continued, his eyes meeting mine. His apology was sincere, but it opened old wounds. I appreciate your apology, Michael, but it doesn't change what happened, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, looking down. I know, I was hoping we could spend some time together. One last night, to say goodbye properly. His suggestion took me by surprise. I don't know if that's a good idea, Michael. I understand if you don't want to, he said quickly. I just thought, maybe it could give us both some closure. The idea of spending one last night with Michael was tempting and terrifying all at once. Part of me longed for that final goodbye, while another part feared the reopening of barely healed wounds. Okay, Michael, one last night, I agreed, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. We decided to meet at a hotel, neutral ground for both of us. Walking into the room that night, I felt a nervous anticipation. Michael was already there, standing by the window. Emma, he said softly as he turned to face me. Michael, I replied, my heart racing. We talked, reminisced, made out, and for a brief moment, it felt like old times. But beneath the laughter and familiar banter, there was an underlying sadness, a recognition of what we had lost. As the night of love wore on, we both knew it was a final farewell, a last chapter in our shared story. When morning came, we parted ways, a silent agreement that this was the end. I left the hotel with a heavy heart, knowing that whatever we had once shared was now truly in the past. Leaving the hotel that morning felt like stepping into a new chapter of my life. I was determined to leave the past behind and focus on rebuilding myself. A few weeks later, I made the decision to move to a new city. The idea of a fresh start was both daunting and exhilarating. Packing up my things, I found myself thinking about all the memories, both good and bad, that I was leaving behind. Lily came over to help, her presence a comforting constant in my life. You sure about this, Em? Lily asked, as she folded a sweater of mine. Yeah, I need this change, Lil. I need to find myself again, I replied, sealing a box with tape. Lily nodded, understanding. You know I'm just a phone call away, right? I know, and I can't thank you enough, I said, giving her a grateful smile. The move was a whirlwind of activity. Settling into my new apartment, starting a new job, and exploring the city kept me busy. It was liberating to be in a place where no one knew my past, where I could be just Emma, not Emma with the sad story. A month into my new life, I started feeling unwell. Thinking it was just stress or maybe a bug, I ignored it at first. But when it didn't go away, I decided to see a doctor. Sitting in the doctor's office, I felt a sense of unease. When the doctor came in with my test results, her expression was kind but serious. Emma, you're pregnant, she announced. The words hit me like a tidal wave. Pregnant? How? Michael and I had been trying for years without a hint of success. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, the tests are quite clear. Congratulations, she said, mistaking my shock for joy. Walking home from the doctor's office, my mind was a whirlpool of emotions. Pregnant. The word echoed in my head, a mix of disbelief and fear. How was I going to do this alone? I called Lily as soon as I got home. Lil, I'm pregnant, I blurted out. There was a pause on the other end. Oh my God, Emma, are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. I never expected this, not now. Lily was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? I don't know, I repeated, but I think I'm going to keep the baby. The decision to raise the child on my own was terrifying, but there was a part of me that felt a strange sense of purpose. This baby, a miracle in its own right, was a part of me, and I was determined to give it the best life I could. As I lay in bed that night, I placed a hand on my stomach, a promise to myself and to the little life growing inside me. This was my new beginning. As my pregnancy progressed, I settled into a routine in my new city. The early stages were tough, with morning sickness and a constant state of tiredness, but I managed. I didn't tell anyone at my new job about my pregnancy. I wasn't ready to share my story or face the questions that would inevitably come. Lily was my main support during this time. We talked almost every day, and she was always there to listen and offer advice. "Have you thought about telling Michael?" Lily asked during one of our phone calls. I sighed, sitting down on my couch. "I've thought about it, but what would be the point? He's moved on, Lil, and I don't want anything from him." "But he's the father, Emma. Doesn't he have the right to know?" She pressed gently. "Maybe he does, but I'm choosing to do this on my own. This baby is mine, and I don't want to complicate things by bringing Michael back into my life," I explained, feeling a mix of determination and fear at the prospect. Lily didn't push further, understanding my decision even if she didn't fully agree. As my belly grew, so did my excitement and nervousness about becoming a mother. I decorated a small nursery, picking out each item with care. The reality of my situation hit me sometimes. I was going to be a single mother, something I never imagined for myself. But each kick and flutter from the baby inside me strengthened my resolve. The day I went into labor was a whirlwind. I called Lily, and she managed to get on the first flight out to be with me. The labor was long and exhausting, but when I held my daughter, Ava, for the first time, every pain and worry melted away. She was perfect, a tiny miracle in my arms. "Look at her, Lil. She's beautiful," I whispered, tears of joy streaming down my face. "She really is, Emma. You did amazing," Lily replied, her own eyes misty. Life with Ava was a beautiful, chaotic mess. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, and a constant worry if I was doing everything right. But every smile, every giggle from Ava made it all worth it. I kept to myself, not wanting to delve into my past with new acquaintances or colleagues. My world revolved around Ava, and I was content with that. I celebrated her milestones alone or with Lily, documenting them in a scrapbook I kept. As Ava grew into a toddler, her personality started to shine. She was curious and full of laughter, a constant source of joy and love. Walking with her in the park, pushing her on the swings, I often thought about how different life was from what I had planned. But looking at Ava, I knew I wouldn't change a thing. She was my world now, and I was determined to give her the best life, a life filled with love and happiness, even if it was just the two of us. 3 years had passed since Ava's birth, and she was now a bubbly, energetic toddler. One sunny afternoon, we were at the park, Ava playing on the swings, her laughter filling the air. I was pushing her gently, lost in the moment, when a voice behind me said, "Emma?" I turned around, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Michael, looking much the same as he did the last time I saw him, but with a few more lines around his eyes. "Michael," I replied, surprised. "What are you doing here?" I'm here on a business trip. I was just walking and saw you here," he explained, his gaze shifting to Ava on the swings. "She's beautiful," he said, watching her with a soft expression. "What's her name?" "Ava," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause as he looked at me, a question in his eyes. "She's yours?" "Yes, she's mine," I said firmly, avoiding his gaze. "Emma, is she—" He hesitated, the unspoken question hanging in the air. I knew what he was asking. The timing would make sense to him, but I wasn't ready to open that door. "She's just mine, Michael." He nodded, though I could tell he wasn't convinced. "She looks happy. You look good, Emma." "Thanks," I said, not sure how to respond. "We should get going. Ava's probably tired." Michael stepped aside as I took Ava's hand and started walking away. "Emma, wait," he called out. I stopped but didn't turn around. "Yes?" If you ever need anything or want to talk, I'm here," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of regret and longing. "Thank you, Michael, but we're doing just fine," I replied without looking back. A few weeks after the encounter in the park, I received a call from Michael. My heart raced as I answered, unsure of what to expect. "Emma, I need to talk to you. It's important." Michael's voice was earnest. "Okay, Michael, what is it?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we meet? There's something I need to say in person," he insisted. We agreed to meet at a small cafe the next day. Sitting across from Michael, I braced myself for what he was about to say. "Emma, I know Ava is my daughter," he began, his gaze unwavering. I felt a lump in my throat. "How did you—" "Lily told me," he said softly. "I ran into her a few days ago. She thought I knew." I was at a loss for words. I had wanted to protect Ava, to shield her from any potential heartache. "Emma, I'm not angry, I'm just surprised, and I wish I had known sooner," he continued. "I was scared, Michael. I didn't know how you'd react, or if you even wanted to be a part of her life," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I understand why you did it, but I wish you had given me a chance. I would have wanted to be there, for both of you," he said earnestly. The conversation that followed was long and emotional. We talked about the past, about our feelings, and about Ava. By the end of it, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Michael wanted to be a part of Ava's life, and I realized that I wanted that too, for her sake. Over the next few months, Michael slowly became a part of our lives. He was great with Ava, and she took to him quickly. Watching them together, I saw what could have been and what still might be. One day, while Ava was napping, Michael and I had a moment to ourselves. "Emma, these past few months have been eye-opening," he said, taking my hand. "I've realized how much I missed you, how much I still care." I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity in them. "Michael, He squeezed my hand. "I'm not asking for everything to change overnight, but I want to try for Ava and for us. If you're willing." I felt a mix of fear and hope at his words. The thought of getting back together was daunting, but there was a part of me that never stopped caring for Michael. "Let's take it slow, see where things go," I suggested, my heart fluttering with a cautious optimism. "That's all I'm asking," he replied, smiling. As we started to navigate this new chapter, I realized that life rarely goes as planned. But sometimes, it gives you a second chance, a chance to make things right. Michael, Ava, and I were finding our way together, building something new from the remnants of the past. It wasn't going to be easy, but as I looked at the two of them, I knew it was worth every effort. Life had thrown us a curveball, but it had also given us a rare opportunity, a second chance at a family.